if you are a 1.0 client, you will notice the first thing out of the gate is that 2.0 has been completely redesigned from the ground up. So this is not just a modification of 1.0. This is a completely different platform, and it gives you the ability to be 100% customizable. So think of it as, if you are new to 2.0 and you're looking at a platform, you're not fitting your workflow into a standalone right out of the box sort of solution. You're going to fit Asset Panda 2.0 into your workflow. And this helps you really go ahead and manage the adoption rate will be higher. And also your ramp time will be much higher because you're more familiar with your workflow. So when we look at 2.0 from a perspective, when we log in right here, what you'll first see is we have true multi-tenancy and an account structure. So for any MSPs out there, or even internally, what this means is you can organize your assets and data, across multiple accounts. You'll see we have a bunch of different accounts that are in my instance right here, and this just makes it easier to manage like different teams. We're talking departments, locations, without sacrificing control or security. So when we look at like our organization, we have a bunch of different accounts underneath here, Pandaware being one of them. We have the facilities department that is tracking their facilities assets, and we have the ITAM module. Now, these modules are many instances of Asset Panda. So facilities doesn't necessarily need to know what's going in the IT world, and maybe IT doesn't necessarily need to know what's going on in facilities. So we kind of keep them a little bit separated. And we do that through roles and permissions. So we have a bunch of predefined roles that can help you right out of the box get up and running. So the organization role, just think about like that as somebody is in your procurement department, maybe accounting. They have access to the entire system. But then we can get very granular. You can give access to people with just account access. Maybe they only have access to just that module, like in that example. Maybe facilities only looks at facilities module, ITAM only at the ITAM module. But then you've got these collaborators. Think about a collaborator as an individual out in the field or even internally who doesn't need the keys to the castle, right? They only need to do one or two things, maybe three things, maybe fill out some smart forms, but they have a very limited amount of information that they can manipulate within the system. Now, if for some example you don't know, none of these work 100% for you, or you need to modify them, we do offer custom roles. So custom roles are ways to be very specific about the information that people can see. So if we look at Pandaware and the ITAM and we say, okay, what kind of records do we want to give people access to? We can basically say, hey, we don't want them to delete anything. We don't want them to import. And maybe we only want them to do a couple of things on the edit. So you can get very granular on the permissions that you set up, including limiting records as well. So maybe you only want them to have access to certain records inside that module or that account. And then all the additional features you can turn off as needed. So this is where you are really going to give that complete control and security over your account. So when we look at an account, let's take a look down here at, let's say, Bamboo Construction. Right, they're looking at their fleet as a module to track, and then also they're looking at the tools. So we're going to set Kelly up pretty good. We're going to take a look at our fleet module. Within our fleet module, on the left-hand side, you're going to see all these collections. And collections are basically data sets that are going to also hold more granular points that you need to understand that relates to your assets. So for example, the safety report collection, we are looking for the vehicle inspection, the inspection date, who actually is requesting that safety report, their email. And as we scroll across, you'll see any of the information that is here that we need to know about this, in this instance, a safety report. You can have unlimited amounts of collections that are in your account and in your module. And unlike 1.0, where we limited your fields across the top to 10, now it is unlimited amounts of fields. And these fields are all customizable. So for example, if you needed to go ahead and add in a field really quickly and you wanted to put in maybe the, driver's license number, you would select your data type and we provide multiple data types for you to enter in. Maybe we just put that in as a numeric, or maybe we put that in as the most popular one, which is text, and we just click save. And now we've instantly added a driver's license field that can be related over to an employee. So if we jump over on the left-hand side again and we look at collections, we're also have a people's collection that would be also associated with these safety reports. Basically, any type of information that you need to keep track of in sort of, I like to think of collections honestly as like a bucket. You can create a bucket for that and then start associating different variables that are inside these buckets to any of the other collection that you need. When we start looking at a collection in general, we also provide saved views. So in case you needed to create a filter and you wanted to see specific information, maybe we say the vehicle inspected date is within a certain amount of time. We'll say maybe next month, and we click apply. We will get, and not this example, but we would find all the vehicles that would need to be inspected within the next month. We could save that view so that way we could see quickly the information without having to go back and forth and create different filters over and over again. So this is a real powerful way to customize the system to fit your workflows. One other thing I'd like to point out is dashboards. I love dashboards. I am a visual kind of person. I need to come into my day, have a quick look at everything. So you can set up dashboards for each one of your modules or accounts, add as many widgets as you want. And in this example from Pandaware, you can see we're seeing all the total assets, the assets that are available, any work orders that might be open. And then really, if we want to drill down further and say, hey, what are the work orders that are open? All of these pie pieces are dynamic. We can click on that, and what that's going to do is bring you over into an area where you can see all of that information. So this is just a quick way of how Asset Panda is going to be highly customizable for you and how you're going to be able to work through this in your particular case. So to this, I'm going to throw it back over to Kelly, and she is going to start talking about these wonderful inspection forms.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matthew. It was a great overview. And I'm going to pick right up where you left off, and that is talking a little bit about forms. So, forms are our way of making control changes. So, as Matthew was telling you about the user permissions that you have, remember those collaborators that come into the system? These are basically your end users. So, in our instance, we're thinking about maybe guys out in the field, the guys who are taking control of the truck, the gals that are actually hopping up in the truck and driving away with it on a day-to-day basis. And we want them to do a pre-trip inspection. So that's going to be our inspection form that we're going to talk about today. That's our why behind it. But there's any number of reasons or whys that we might use an inspection form, whether we're inspecting equipment out in the field, we could be doing a inspection of a room or a facility, we could be inspecting our assets, individual tools, or if we're in production, our molds, whatever the case may be. Inspection workflows have a lot of applications whenever we talk about assets. So for this one, though, we're looking at that pre-trip inspection. And what we do is we create a form because those collaborators, they can't come in here and just click on this asset record like I can as an organizational admin. They have to actually physically do something to be able to change this. And that's where the pre-trip inspection form comes into play. So if we click on that form, and our workflow in Asset Panda 2.0 is that we start with the form. So even if you're on your mobile device, you're going to start with the form and you select the form that you want to use. And then you're only going to see a list of assets that that form could possibly apply to. So when we start working through the configuration of how to build this form, you're going to see that we're able to select that particular, what they want to see here as far as what fields, including what assets would be filtered for this particular form. In this case, I'm going to grab my very first asset in the list there. I'm going to go ahead and hit continue. And then I move into my actual pre-trip inspection form. So something that we can do is actually page through our forms. And I really like this feature because For me, I want to be able to break the information out in chunks of things that I want them to be able to complete, and I don't want the form to look overwhelming to my end user. So on a mobile device, this is very simple, able to be seen on even the smallest of phones. So the first thing on their pre-trip inspection, it's telling them they have one record selected because we do have the capability of using multiple records if we would want to. And I can input my date of inspection. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, hey, set it to my current date. And then I have to type in that odometer reading. So I'm going to look at my dash and we'll just say that this truck has a very low mileage on it. It's relatively new. And then I can go to my next page. So I even look at these when we talk about things like safety inspections that Matthew kind of teased a little bit. These could be a lot of our safety questions. Before you complete your inspection, what safety questions do you want answered? Do you have your hard hat? Is there a fire extinguisher in the cab? Any of those things could take place here. Do you have your PPE if we're doing some type of medical or hazardous material inspection in some way? So we can certify that these things are in place. At any step of the way, we can also allow receipt of responses after submission. So if we wanted to get an email whenever we submit this, we could do that from this page here to automatically email the person filling out the form. Now I go to my next page, and this is where I'm actually going to do my inspection. So I need to take a look. Are my lights working? And again, these are single select drop-down lists that we're creating. We're going to configure these here in just a minute, but we can put any options in here that we want. In my case, yeah, my lights are working. There's no issues with those. I'm going to go ahead and check my horn. Is that working too? And maybe I see that the horn is not working properly. It's kind of being a little funny on me today. When I hit that not working, I can now set up conditional fields. So my horn notes are only going to show whenever I select that the horn is not working. So in this case, I can just say no sound. Maybe it's not working quite perfectly there. If I wanted to, I could track things like my fuel level in my vehicle. I can also ask for that pre-trip inspection with my engine oil level. Same thing here. If I have a not adequate, then I could set up that automatic fail to be a yes. There's no other option in this drop down for me. It's going to automatically fail, which can trigger an automation for me. If it's adequate and everything works good, we'll just leave it at that. And then I have the option here of selecting what that status would be. Now, we can also set this up to automatically pre-fill with the status if we wanted to, and automatically update the status as you're used to in 1.0 if you're a 1.0 customer. Or we could give you the ability to choose what you're going to select here. Now, we default that this is going to be checked out because if I'm running a pre-trip inspection, I'm probably taking ownership of the vehicle. However, because I could run into some potential issues, maybe I decide not to take this vehicle and, I could list it as still available because I'm choosing not to take this one or potentially put it as out of service. So at this point, we'll say that we're going to check it out. That horn is not a complete fail inspection. It's not working great, but I could still drive the car if I needed to. And I'm going to make a note here that horn has no sound, just because I want to make sure that I'm giving some additional color when I press in the center, maybe. So I can use this however I want if I wanted to summarize the concerns, if I had multiple concerns for this particular ticket. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit that submit. Now, in this instance, when I submit that, I have a few things that are going to happen. Now, my rich screen takes me right back to that pre-trip inspection screen again. But if I jump over to my vehicles, what I'm going to see is that those fields are now updated for that particular vehicle with the information that we had put in. And notice that my horn notes are here with that no sound, as well as if I scan over, I have all of my information. Now, even though I said I was still going to check out this vehicle, notice that I set up some automations in the background, and I purposefully did that so you could see that these automations would run. And one of those is that I automatically have labeled this as an out of service vehicle. So regardless of what's happening, and if I said I put the wrong thing in there because this had a fail inspection as far as my company is concerned, it has now put this vehicle out of service and has put that service ticket note here. Now, what that also has done, what my automation has done in the background as well, is created a service ticket for me. So it's taken the items that I populated in that form, and it has generated a service request because it is recognized, Asset Panda has recognized that I have failed this inspection, and it has generated a ticket for me to put through my service department. And I can also send these notifications to go immediately to my service department, maybe one of my managers, as well as to that person out in the field saying, hey, no, you can't take this vehicle, and send that notification. So this was a really simple example of what we would do with an inspection workflow. But let's take a look at some of the back end features of how we would build this out. And I just want to check and make sure, Matthew, we don't have any questions, correct?
That is correct. You're still good to go.
Excellent. Perfect. So, because there's a couple things that we would probably want to create, just generally speaking, as admins in the platform, just first and foremost. And one of those might even be those save views. I know Matthew touched on these a little bit, but we can take a look at this real quick before we jump into the deep back end here. And that's because I have a couple vehicles in different statuses right now. So maybe I want to be able to see in a very quick instant which vehicles are out of service. Well, notice I can come up to my filter and I can come in here and I can say, look by status. So I want to find the status field for my vehicle. And let me just, there we go, find vehicle. And we're going to say that that's going to be equal to. If you've been in 1.0, I just want to mention this too. You're going to have a lot more operators whenever you're filtering for information. In addition to that, you also have the capability of filtering with and or filters. So keep that in mind. You can match those conditions either way, which was a restriction that we had in 1.0 because we could only use the and. But I'm going to say, hey, I just want to see what's out of service here. And I'm going to go ahead and apply that. And here's my view. So I have the capability of coming in here and saying, I just want to see all my out of service vehicles, and I want to save this save view for later use in other places. So now that I have that, oh, I typed that kind of funny, out of service vehicles, right here over here, my save views, I can now turn that view on and off very easily. So if I'm running additional, and let me just clear that filter here, if I am running additional, vehicles at one time that might go out of service, I can click on this save view and get the current list of vehicles that are out of service at that point. So the save views become really helpful whenever we start to want to decipher information and whittle that information down. So let's jump into that back end though, like I was saying, that's going to be in our settings icon here. And today we are actually in our turtle shell entertainment and in our fleet collection module over here. And we're going to start in our forms. So we're going to go ahead and manage our forms. And we're going to take a look at this pre-trip inspection, just so you can see how this is built out. Now, whenever we're creating a form, we have 5 steps that we go through if we're updating records, and we have 4 steps if we're creating new records. So just a little side note, remember your collaborators can't even add information into the system at that base level without the use of a form. So typically we would see forms used to even add new information. And what's nice about forms and our user permissions as well is that you can create custom permissions that where you would have people who can access a form, but they never need to access the collections themselves. So think of these for things like service requests out in the field. Maybe I have, agents out in the field that just need to submit service requests whenever they're doing inspections. They could potentially use those forms because they're never going in to look at the information. All they're doing is submitting the form. So they don't need permissions to do anything else except access that form and fill out the information. So that's something else that you can keep in mind. Now, our first step on this setup is really the high level. What is this form really even going to do for us? So we would always name that form, and then we would choose whether it's creating new records or updating existing. And right now, our forms are only working with serialized assets. Now, I will tell you we have an update that's going to be coming out soon where you'll also be able to use forms with consumables. Now, you also want to choose the collection that you're working with. So in our case, we're working with that vehicle collection because we're updating the vehicles. So that's the one key. Whatever we want to update is the collection that we're selecting here. And if we wanted to make this available to run as what we would call group action in 1.0, for example, use it on multiple records in one selection, we would toggle this toggle on. Now, in case of a pre-trip inspection with a vehicle, I'm probably not inspecting multiple vehicles because I can only drive one at a time. So we're going to keep this off as one. But the capability is there when you start to apply this to some other types of inspections you might do. And then the same thing here, if I want to allow the receipt of responses. So if I want to receive an email of that response after I submit it, then I want to make sure I toggle this on here. Once I've adjusted that form to how I want, I can hit my save and continue here. And I always recommend that we go through the save and continue just so you save your progress along the way. You'll notice that you are able to click in the upper left-hand corner here as well, but you're not saving your progress as you move. So I prefer to go that save route. Now, here's where we're actually going to build out the form itself. And you're going to see that this looks very different from building actions. And that's because I wouldn't say that actions and forms are parity. I would say that forms are parity plus. We're getting a lot of the same functionality that we received from actions in 1.0, but we're taking them a bit to the next level. And there's more enhancements with what we can do with forms in 2.0. And that's part of the reason why I say parity plus. The other piece is because we wouldn't build our forms exactly the same for the workflow. And a lot of you might be saying, okay, what about round trip actions? You're exactly right. In 2.0, we build everything as a one way and we use that record selection to use that restriction. So let's take a look at that and let's start with our form build. Right off the bat, we can change the name of the form if we want to, because this is what our users are going to see. As an admin, I might be calling this pre-trip inspection, but I might be calling this something else, or my guys might refer to it in the field to something else, and I can do that here. I also can give this a form description or give them some instructions for that form right here in that form description. From here, all I'm going to do is use this add. So I'm going to pop this open so you can see this. Our add in forms allows us to add two types of things. The first one is the fields that we have from the collection. The second one are form styles. And whenever we're talking about the field piece of this, we can also create new fields on the fly from your form. So I absolutely love this feature because how many times have you started to build out an action in 1.0 and you realize that you don't have the field that you want to collect that's going back into your group? Well, from here, we can create those fields back in the collection right from the form. And also, if you're somebody who works off of your forms, if you know that your workflow is based off of this form, we can start in the form and basically create the collection from the form. The only limitation you have on creating fields are any of what we call pull from fields in Asset Panda 2.0. So these would be your linked fields to other collections. So if I'm assigning something to somebody in particular, that would be a linked field because I'm calling up one of my supporting collections, and I would have to build that back in the actual collection itself. But I can create as many new fields on the fly as I want. So right here in my top part of my form, I've given that date of inspection and the odometer reading. Now, if you notice, as I'm mousing over that, what is the odometer reading, you're seeing that little tooltip pop up for mileage. And what that's telling me is that I actually call this field mileage back in my collection. But mileage, yeah, it's nice. It definitely tells me what I'm looking for, but I wanted to be a little more formal on my form. I wanted to ask a question that my user is going to have to fill out. I don't want any questions about what I possibly am asking them to do in this particular field. So any of my fields, I can come in and I can actually overwrite this. What is the date of the inspection? And I can provide a little bit more color right here in the form and a little bit more instruction. I also have the ability, if I edit by using my double meatball menu, if I edit a field, I can create helper text here as well. So if I want them to input the date of the actual inspection, because sometimes people like to do things a day later, for example, I could go ahead and do that. And that's going to give me another little piece of extra information about this particular field. So keep in mind that I can play through some of those scenarios and I can obviously modify each one of these fields. Now, the other thing I can do is I can actually move these fields around a little bit and start to column them onto the page. So if you're working on the web app, this is really nice because I can start to see information a little bit differently. I will tell you if you're using mobile though, chances are that screen is a little, well, it's going to be a little more narrow than your laptop or your computer screen. So either way you look at it, when we get to the preview section, this field is probably going to fall underneath here just because the screen width is going to dictate that a little bit and it's responsive to our screen. Now, notice that I have a page here, and that's because I added some of those form styling elements as well. So if I take a look at form styling, I can do lots of things here. I can add headings and text and pages and lines. And we had somebody asking in one of our pit stops last week about I want to give a property agreement when somebody takes ownership of one of my devices or they take ownership of one of my vehicles. I want them to sign off on this. I want to provide a property agreement of some way. How can I do that? Well, this is your ticket to getting that done. So you can put that heading in and you can type as much text as you want as part of that agreement, as part of this form. And then we also have the capability of those signatures. So from here, I added that page element and I moved into the actual inspection. So this would have been where I hit next page and I came here. Already you're seeing a couple different things here. Remember, we had those conditional fields that were starting to pop up. So here, if I look at my light status, this is the field that they filled out. But if they answered a certain way here, my light status with the little eyeball here is the field that popped up for me. So let's take a look at how I set that up. And I'm going to hit my double meatball menu there, and I'm going to go to show hide. And when I do that, I see that I set a condition. I said that when the light status is equal to not working is when I want to show this particular field. So all of those fields of information, you can branch in a variety of ways. I could continue with this branching if I really wanted to, based off of what I see here. I could even say that hey, you can't progress any further. Horn status won't even show unless light status is first approved. So remember, we got to the end and I showed you how we put that automatic fail in for a particular item. If a particular item, like if my oil, if I don't have enough oil in the car, it is an automatic fail. You cannot drive this vehicle at that point. Well, at this point here, my light status, it maybe they're working and they're fine, but when I get to stage two, my horn status isn't working like we saw in our inspection, and I want to stop the inspection there. I could set these all up to branch off of each other so that we're only seeing the next question based on the answer of the previous. So those are all things and capabilities that we can start to build in here as well. Just want to take a quick break, make sure there's no additional questions. We have
You're
anything
looking
popping up?
you're looking pretty good right now, Kelly. But please, if anybody on the call does have any questions, don't hesitate to pop it in chat or raise your hand.
Awesome. So if we go ahead and take a look at the next couple fields, these are all very similar. These are single select list again. So we just created these different lists so you could come in and populate those based off of set values rather than just have them text in free form. And one thing I want to mention too in our edit is that you can require fields. You can also set a field as read only. Now that wouldn't make sense in this particular situation, but sometimes we don't want somebody to change a value. We just want them to be able to see the value of a field. And that would be a great use for our read only. The other thing is this show current value. So one thing that's a very big change from Asset Panda 1.0 to 2.0 is how we use change fields. So any field on my form, it's technically a change field. If I input new information into this field, it's going to use that to change the existing record. So if I want to see what the previous value was here, I can show that current value, which means that that is the current value that's going to be populated. Whenever I save my form, that value is now also pushing out to the record and basically maintaining it. If I choose to put a blank in here, then I could be removing that value. In addition to that, anything that I change and update is going to update that record as well. So also some things that are a little bit different in how we configure. And then as I come further down, if I wanted to always toggle this on as part of my form build, I can go ahead and do that as well. That's going to always have that box now checked by default for the receipt of submission. I can turn on a thank you message here. This would be an ability to type in a little thank you message. So when my form was complete, rather than me going right back to the form start page, I could actually have a message on the screen telling me that my form was successfully completed at that point. And then in addition to that, I have these after form submission triggers, like these little actions that take place. So if I wanted to replace a particular value with something, I could. So an example of this might be that vehicle status. Now, for our example, I left it up here, but if I wanted to remove that and I wanted to replace that value and say the vehicle status is always going to be set to checked out whenever somebody completes this form, I could obviously do that as well. So this is one place where I can set up some of those base level automations. If I hit save changes on that, we're going to go over to our record selection. So this next screen is where you actually determine what somebody is going to see on the screen whenever they're selecting the item, but also it's going to give you an opportunity to limit what items can be selected. So for example, maybe I am tracking different types of vehicles. I have trucks and I have cars. You can only check out a truck. That might be a way for me to filter and say, hey, but I'm going to filter by type. In this case, I can't check out something that's already checked out. So if I come down here and I say, and I got to find that vehicle status, it keeps trying to hide on me. And I go, my vehicle status must be equal to available for me to be able to check out a vehicle. So it's going to filter out any vehicles that are not listed as available. And if you remember, I have one that's out of service, one that's checked out, one that currently does not have a status on it, which is why I'm not seeing any vehicles now. I also can come in here and change the fields. So one of the things I can do even in my collection is toggle on and off any field I don't want to see, and I can reorder my fields in a way that makes the most sense to me. So in this case, I don't need to see a whole lot here. I don't need to see much more than just the field itself and maybe the vehicle status. So I'm just going to pull these two things up here, and that changes my screen drastically. So what I like to mention here is that keep in mind that your end users, particularly those ones out in the field working off a mobile device, we may want to limit what they can see on the screen to keep their screen as clean as possible because they're working with a smaller screen. So that's something to keep in mind, and you have that capability here. Once we save those changes, we're going to move it next into our share. Now, if we're creating a brand new form, we may want to share this form, and that's our way of saying who can access this form. Think back to Asset Panda 1.0, you select which actions you want each user role permissions to see. Our way of doing that in Asset Panda 2.0 is to share the forms with the roles or the people who are actually going to use those particular forms. So I'm going to give user permissions for them to have access to forms for that particular collection, but I still need to come in here and say, you know what, collaborators should be able to access this form. Or if I had particular users in my system, I might say just these couple users are the people who are going to access this particular form. Once I save those changes, I get to move to my preview screen. So I get to see what this is going to look like from the beginning. I can view on the desktop, tablet, and mobile. Now, again, I restricted everything to, a particular status. So right here, I'm just going to clear that status out. I'm going to hit that save and bring you back to the preview. So notice that I'm seeing what this would look like on a desktop versus what it might look like on a tablet versus what it's looking like on mobile. And on a mobile device, you can scroll over. Keep in mind that there's a couple different view options when we talk about the assets themselves from the collection view. In the form view, there will be less of a restriction, and they still have the capability of grouping and sorting and searching even more. So if I was searching for a particular truck or something, I could possibly do that here from the mobile device as well. And then I would go ahead and hit continue because and notice I would have to select the record. So if I'm in preview mode, I'm actually previewing how this form would work as if I was an end user. If I'm satisfied with those changes, I would just go ahead and hit the save changes. And that form is now available for me to use. And as a user, I could, if I have access to this, I'm going to see that particular form underneath my forms on the left-hand side there. Now, one of the other things that I want to touch on real quick before we run out of too much time is going to be those automations that came with those forms. But before I do that, I just want to make sure we don't have any additional questions. I think we're still good to go, though.
Kelly, you're
So
good to go.
awesome. So if I jump over to those automations in the same module, because remember, every module is its own instance of Asset Panda. So what I'm building in this one, I may not be building in another module, but I went to automations in the module I'm looking at. And we can go ahead and pop open some of these automations. So the first one is going to be the out of service for automatic oil. So if my oil is not adequate in this vehicle, I automatically want to mark this truck as out of service. And what I did was I triggered that particular automation to run whenever the record is updated using a form, because I know my end users are all going to use a form. Now, I have additional capability here. I can say that this would be on a manual change. Maybe I'm importing devices in or importing vehicles into the system. If I'm using APIs or additional automations, any one of those can work with the trigger. It's just what I chose here for form. I have to select which one of my collections I'm talking about. And then I want to select which field the automation should be looking at. Where's that trigger coming from? Well, in this case, it's coming from that automatic fail oil field in that collection. So I'm looking specifically at that field. Now, when is also applying what conditions have to be met. In my case, that has to be equal to yes. It has to be an automatic fail in order to trigger this automation. And I can apply multiple conditions. And again, I get that capability of what I'm going to match with those conditions of any or I'm sorry, any or all, which is our version of and or. One nice thing here is that you can also view the records when you're creating an automation to see how many records are actually being applied that apply these conditions to it. So that's going to help you know if you're getting right, if you're whittling down which records would actually have that particular condition apply to it. So you can always check that out as well. Now, whenever these conditions are met, what do I want to happen? And I have that capability. This is the automation side over here on the right. We call it the action side, not to get confusing with our actions in 1.0. And when I can have multiple actions that take place, which is the instance here. So the first action I have happening is I'm updating a field value. If this is an automatic fail, then I want my vehicle status to go automatically out of service. There is no bones about it. It's absolutely going to happen. I do have some other capabilities here, though. I can send notifications and send reports. I can even create records. So in this instance as well, my notification is being sent. And if I edit here, I can see that I have rich text editing capability with regards to emails. So if you're sending a notification or if you're sending a report, you have the capability of attaching those to an email and you can configure these. So if I really want you to please service this vehicle, I can go ahead and bold that please. I can use some of my editing capabilities with list number systems. And I like to think of this as a call to action. You're going to get a link here as well that's taking you to that record in Asset Panda. So we want to make sure that we're giving that call to action. Since you're sending a piece of information, what do you want somebody to do with it? In addition to that, you have a couple options on how you can populate that email field. Now, I just happen to be a user in my system, so we'll kind of talk a little bit about this one. If I go to user roles, I could very, very specifically say, hey, I want to send this to every collaborator, or I want to send this to every one of my module or organizational admins, for example. In addition to that, I can use a very specific email. Hey, I want it to go to this person and this person only at Asset Panda. They are going to get this notification every time. That email is not found here because I haven't put it in, but I'm going to go ahead and select that email and now it's going to that specific person. My third option is going to be my collection email fields. And I love this option because within a particular collection, if I have surfaced an email from one of my other collections where I've collected that piece of information, I can use it. In addition, any of my user fields, I can use the email attached to that particular user. So in this instance, in my vehicles, I have collected the who added the record and who last updated the record. and that is a user stamp. So I have the email attached to those users. So if I wanted to say, hey, the person who last updated this is the person who should get the email about this particular record, I can set that up as well. If I have multiple emails that I need to send off of this, I would just create multiple actions off of that trigger. So I would just set those up individually. And once I have all of those triggers set, I would just go ahead and hit save on that and make sure it's toggled on. And that's going to generate that automation for me as well. The other automation that I created, just so we can look at it real quick, was creating the record. So I actually set this one up separate because I wanted it to be triggered off of any problem that we had with the vehicle. So because my triggers were different, I set a second automation here. And notice that any of these conditions can be matched, whether the light, the horn, or the automatic fail went off. I want to make sure that we're creating the record in service requests. Whenever we do that, we will be asked to map the fields. So the fields from my form over here are mapped to my service request fields. These are the 5 fields or 4 fields that I have in service requests. So I'm saying, hey, what do these become whenever I fill out the form and then complete this automation? And then I went ahead and saved that one. And that's where we were able to see, if we go back into our fleet vehicle, then not only did we have the field update with that information, we also received the ticket for the service request. And if I can find it somewhere on my computer here, we actually have the email here as well. Let me see if I can pull that up and pull it over real quick to where we need to. Give me 1 second, and here we go. And this is the email that came through. So remember, I didn't have a whole lot of information in the body of the text, but this vehicle needs oil. It came to me. Here's my please service the vehicle and my link to that particular vehicle for me to follow from Asset Panda. So that's a real high level overview, kind of semi in-depth overview of how we would set up that particular workflow to utilize those inspections. I think one of the key points and something that's a really big differentiator from 1.0 to 2.0 today is how we would be able to create those conditional fields. So as we're going through the inspection, how do we want that flow to really start to look? And you have a lot more flexibility on how those forms look as well. Matthew, anything you want to add to that? I think we're just about out of time.
Yeah, I think we need to leave a little bit more time for the folks that are on the call here for any questions before we move on.
Kind of a quiet bunch today. That just
Yep.
means we explained it really well.
They're all Asset Panda power users. Oh, look, Tom. It looks like Tom has a question.
Yeah, Tom, go ahead, go for it.
Yeah, it says the chat is disabled. So if anyone was trying
Oh,
to ask
well,
questions, they could.
the Q&A button should be still functioning for you though, either way.
Ah, okay. I'm a newbie Zoom user. My bad.
No worries, no worries. Go for it though.
That's actually all I wanted to say.
Okay. Well, appreciate that. Yeah, sometimes the Q&A allows us to keep track of the questions a little bit better in Zoom, but if you're new to Zoom, sometimes it's a little harder to find down there.
I understand.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, appreciate that. All right. Well, Matthew, if you want to go ahead and wrap us up then.
Yeah, so everybody. Oh, well, hold on 1 second. 1 second, Kelly, before
Oh,
we do anything. Oh, nope. Patrick, you're very welcome. And thank you, Patrick, and everybody on the call for joining us today for just a little bit more of an overview of how you can go ahead and create those vehicle inspections or any sort of form that you need to collect data on, and how to get that into Asset Panda 2.0. So I highly recommend if you are a 1.0 user to look at 2.0. If you're new to 2.0, please feel free to email Kelly or myself and we can help you out.
awesome. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining, and hopefully we'll see you at a Panda Pit Stop or at our next 2.0 Power Hour. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye, everybody.